to United Teachers Los Angeles. This morning, we are so honored and excited to host NEA President Becky Pringle and CTA Officer David Goldberg, and NEA board members, UTLA officers, NEA staff, community school coordinators, and chapter chairs that will be doing the really important work as well as Reclaim Our Schools. People who have been doing the important work of building the movement for community schools in Los Angeles. So everyone should have an agenda in front of you. And I just want to review the goals, what we're here to accomplish today, and how we think we're going to do that. So this morning, we are honored to be able to bring folks from the front lines of our schools in Los Angeles to highlight key successes of the community school model and challenges during COVID. We want our community school team to share the recent victories and the role that the investment that the NEA has made in UTLA played in that. And then we want to be able to lift up stories and through our stories demonstrate how the community school strategy fits into the overall vision of the teachers union movement. We're going to spend the first half of our time together hearing how our local, state, and national affiliates see community schools in our broader vision. Then we're going to spend the chunk of our time listening to the stories of purpose, of transformation, of movement, of passion from Cohort 1 and Cohort 2 schools, the community school coordinators. And then we're going to wrap up with hearing from our amazing partners of Reclaim Our Schools Los Angeles to hear what is the role of labor community coalitions in building this movement. There will be time chunked in for questions, so if you've got a question, write it down. We'll have opportunity to do that. So I want to pass the mic off to Cecily Meyer-Cruz.
Hi, good morning, everyone. First, to the educators that are here, thank you so much for giving up your time today to have this convening. It's very important that your voice and stories are here and grounded in the work that we do locally, statewide, and at the national level. So I just wanted to say thank you because we know it's summertime and it's vacation and it's a time of rejuvenation and rest. So again, thank you for being here. So UTLA in 2014 began the overarching umbrella of the schools Los Angeles students deserve. And we conducted a real deep dive into what that meant for educators, students, and our educational community. Our school district has suffered, really our schools, our neighborhood schools have suffered through the charterization, corporate charterization, privatization attacks, and the extreme disinvestments. And we see that on a daily basis. And so when we are talking about having a grassroots movement and really talking about what it actually means to see our babies really soar, it means that public schools, our schools, need to be funded at significant levels. And that also means that we have to build and expand the work. I'll just take this off. Build and expand the work and keep that at the very center of every single thing that we do because we are concerned with our babies and the educational community. Now, we know that every child deserves to have a classroom that is safe, a school that is safe, and what more could I say than community schools are that answer. It's the anchor into the community. It is a focus not just on academics, but on developing our youth. It's about family support. It's about building relationships and partnerships within and throughout the community. These school buildings are the community hub. We have to work hand in hand hand with parents and community members and students and leaders to really uplift that work. Having more community schools in Los Angeles school district is something that educators across LA have been fighting for a very long time.
If you all wouldn't have taken this courageous effort around the strike a few years ago, this strike captured the imagination of this whole state and even the country. And you fought around this issue, right? The district tried to tell us, we're going to give you this little money, we're going to give you health benefits, and we know you'll sell out the community around these other issues. And that's not what we all did and what you all did. We struck in the driving rain around community schools, around these issues. And that kind of boldness, that kind of saying, taking over the streets of LA captured all of our imagination, and you created space for these kind of events now to happen, right? And I say that because I know as an LA Unified person that sometimes the bureaucracy can wear us down, right? And I know that even all of us are under-resourced, the community schools are under-resourced, all of us are working so hard, and you all are working so hard, and sometimes it can feel like it's overwhelming, and is it really changing stuff? But it is, and you are capturing the imagination still. We now have, in California, we now have 20 other locals who are following your model and developing community schools. And locals, suburban, urban, rural districts, places all over the state have been just excited by this. And we have more money coming into California schools for community schools than any place in the history of education. $3 billion more dollars. And we know that is a huge investment. Other places around the country are looking at us and like, that is incredible. But we also know that's going to be a real struggle, right? That these can be very easily top down. Our principal can just tell you, oh, you're a community school now, right? And nothing changes. Or the local district superintendent. But this really takes struggle, ongoing struggle with our power. And Merwin talked about power, and that's what this is really about. Our collective power as workers, engaging with them, but also our collective power with the community. And when we do that, we all know that there's nothing that can stop us. So I really want to take off my hat to all of you all. And Cecily, your amazing leadership of this. I know our president, Toby Boyd, who will be here later today, has made this also a priority. I know that NEA, and I've heard that you have also really made this a huge priority. And we appreciate that. We appreciate your support around all these 40 locals now, nationally, who are part of this community schools. And NEA, the way that you've been really providing leadership around this has been an inspiration for us all.
At the very beginning of the year when I took office, I articulated my vision for the NEA, which was to lead a movement uniting our members and the nation to reclaim public education as a common good, and then transform it into something it never was designed to be. And that is a racially and socially just and equitable system that prepares every student, everyone, to succeed in a diverse and interdependent world. That's a big old vision, right? And so, people are like, Becky, that's a big old vision. How's that going to work? How can you possibly do that? And as I thought about the how, I talked with leaders like Cecily and Toby and David and others about actually figuring out how we leverage the power of the largest labor union in this country. And so my theory on the case is this, is that if we have a dynamic alignment within and throughout the organization, that's how we do it. And as I watched these incredible leaders here in Los Angeles through the strike where I joined you, but not only that, going back before that, and then coming out of that, and being ready to take advantage of this opportunity. We were able to come together, national, state, and local, and leverage our collective expertise and brilliance and resources at every level of our association and every level of this government. It's a perfect storm. And UTLA was ready. You are ready to take advantage of that. And as I said to Cecily earlier, and not just that, I need UTLA reaching out to locals across this country because we're building a movement, because we understand the power and possibilities and purpose of community schools. As an educator for over 30 years, I know I can't, and as the president of NEA, I can't possibly do this by myself, and I don't want to. I want to know how we leverage the assets of our communities in powerful ways so that we all demonstrate it is our shared responsibility. When we say all, we mean all. And we all have to come together to support our students. Because here's the thing. Our babies are depending on us to be worthy of them.
So I'm gonna just do like a quick highlight reel, right, of what got us to 2021. Cecily mentioned some of it, David and Becky, right? 2019 was a pretty important date in the history of our union, but also in the history of teachers' unions across the country. But before community schools became a buzzword or defined by wraparound services, the NEA and UTLA leaders in this room had spent years building trusting and reciprocal relationships with students, staff, family, and community in their own local organizing efforts. So when Cecily and Alex stepped into leadership in 2014, it was not only logical for us to fight for community schools, but it was strategic, given the needs of our school communities and the rapid growth of the privatizer influence. Our school site priorities focused on re-envisioning school site structures and leadership to make space for emerging talent and structure tests. In 2015, on the family and community front, it looked like engaging organizations, agencies, and unions to determine who we had the strongest political alignment and unity with to form a labor community coalition that would make community schools its strategic priority as a way to center Black students and families, because we believe that if Black people win, we all can win.
I really wanted to do something that would support all the work that they've been doing. So I'm charged with leading problem-solving teams, looking at creating and refining school systems to support student achievement. So one student who benefited from my leadership is Melanie. And Melanie was a first grader last year, and she wasn't logging on to Zoom classes. We had a lot of those students, right? But first grade, critical year, so phone calls home weren't working. We went to home visits. I went by myself. I went with the parent rep. I told the principal to go. So all of that facilitation was due to having a community school coordinator. So when I went, I listened to Dad. He told me different reasons why she couldn't why she couldn't log on. They didn't have time. They were getting ready to work. The daughter just couldn't manage technology. It's too difficult. He had a tutor. He didn't need the school. He didn't need for his daughter to go to school. So each time I visited, the reasons changed, and so I had to have an answer, find the answers each time. So you don't have time? I can help you log on. When is convenient for you? 7 a.m., 7 p.m.? I'll come back when you need me to. You have a tutor? Okay, great. So let's see how she's doing. Could I assess her and see how she really is doing right now, and maybe give the tutor some data so that she could look at how to specifically help your child? Okay. And so he let me do that. We reviewed the data together, and he could see that there were some gaps and they needed to be addressed, and it was relevant for him. Hotspot doesn't work. I don't know how to hook it up. Great, I'll call right now. There's tech support at my school. They can help me. So every time he had a reason, I had to find a response. I had to get the resources. I had to be persistent. And so he just ran out of reasons, and the daughter logged on after 4 months of no school. So this kind of persistent action wouldn't have been able to take place without the curriculum support from NEA, the whole idea of problem-solving teams, the one-on-one support that we got from the NEA, and having a community school coordinator dedicated to this work. So I want to thank you for providing all this support for us.
My name is Juan Vaca. I am at the Los Angeles School of Global Studies at the Miguel Contreras Learning Complex. And again, we know that as a community school, we want the school building to not just take up space in a community, but to be the hub of the community. And of such, my very first task, I started the job in January of 2020, right before the pandemic. And so I walked the streets. The community was new to me. So I wanted to make sure that I'm learning from members in the community of what the community is about, rather than reading about some data point provided by some algorithm. And with that, I came across the plethora of resources that were in the community, available to the community, but no one knew about them. And so there was no point of access. One such case that exemplified the use of that resource was one of the parent of our newcomer who had just been released from internment camp. And so this young man hadn't seen his father in about 15 years. And so Mayan, Quiche speaking, and Spanish was not the strongest language. So I walked Don Antonio through the process of enrolling this kid into our school, realized that, the young man is from Guatemala. So my first assumption is oh, you'll know Spanish, and all the bilingual resources we have you're going to benefit from. But I realized that we were lacking in that resource of meeting their needs specifically. So with that, I remembered that we had connected with an organization called Comunidades Indígenas en Liderazgo, called Cielo, that actually does that work on translating and providing resources to many folks in the Mayan community. And so that was one of the things that our school facility did not have a resource to be able to do that. The teachers are busy working on their curriculum. The principal is working on building those positive relationships at their school. But there wasn't a dedicated person of being able to find the resources, pull them together, and present them to community as part of our parent engagement and pillar for our school. So that's one way that our community has benefited from being a community school and having my position funded.
I'm at 93rd Street Elementary School in South Central. We are one of the largest elementary schools in LA with almost 1,000 students. And so what better time to become a community school coordinator than the pandemic, right? So when people didn't know what to do, we went into really high gear because there was someone like me, because you were able to do the work that you did. At my school, we mobilized quickly. We ran what we call the COVID-19 crisis assessment. And we were able to realize that we needed a lot of resources for our community on a long-term basis, not just for the pandemic, but after the pandemic, right? Our families were going to need a lot of support. And so we have built partnerships that are lasting. We were able to feed on a weekly basis over 300 families that came through. We have one of 3 giving rooms at 93rd. It's a room the size of the room you're in right now, full of shoes, clothing, home necessities, anything that families might need. And the community has access to the giving room at 93rd. We've also done vaccine clinics. We just finished our second one a couple of weeks ago. We have walked the neighborhood to make sure that our community is getting vaccinated. And I just want you to know that the work is hard. It's harder than being a teacher, for sure. But I think that I would not ever have been able to do what I'm doing without people like Esperanza, without people like Kyle, Saret, and without being able to partake in all of the programs that the NEA had in place for us. So I had no idea how to be a community school coordinator. And when we were asked to enroll in the programs and take the curriculum that the NEA has developed, it really opened my eyes and it helped me realize that the learning, right? Like I had my curve for learning was really high, and I started digging into the curriculum, and very happy to have Kyle. And I also participated in the NEA Ferry, and it's a great project. And so I'm really thankful for the funding, for the drive, to Cecily, right? Because I feel that without her support, without her energy for community schools, we wouldn't be where we're at. And we're in our third year, but I feel like I need so much more time. I begged Kyle, I was like, I went through coaching, but there's coaching next year, right? Because I need more coaching. So he's like, it's up to NEA. So I'm hoping that NEA continues all the funding and the programming, because our kids in LA and our families are really benefiting. So thank you so much, Cecily and Becky, for all of your support. And we hope that we can continue to give you great stories to feel good about. Your investment brought $1.6 million in dollars amounts, because we've counted it, into 93rd Street Elementary School, and that was just with my position. So thank you so much for your support.
Thank you, Ingrid. And I believe the Learning Policy Institute Community Schools Playbook talks about for every $15 that you invest in a community school coordinator, no, for every $1 you get $15 in return, right? So you know, and 93rd is one of the examples of where that is true.
I want to know if you yet know, as you're coming to the end of the 3 years, the kind of support now that you have this, you know, experience, and you're in a place now where you can help others, and so it may be, you know, some companion piece that we need to start building that supports folks like you know, at that coach level. Have you thought about what those kinds of things would be?
You know, I'm very good at asking for what I need, and I think that's one of the things that we learn, right? Like, not everyone is good at that. I think Esperanza, I contacted her, I texted her, I called her, like, and I just did it repeatedly until she answered. Like, same with Kyle, right? Like, I would email Kyle all the time. And so I think we're at a moment that growing the staff that can support the community schools so that then we in turn support others is key and crucial. And so we need more coaches. We need more Esperanzas.
And just to add, Billy will talk more about the recent infrastructure victory that we had. But just to say, it's hard to speak about it because it's me, but because of the investment that the NEA made in the GPS grant for UTLA, I was able to create a model of what a community school coach would do, so that now the district will hire more, about 6 more, so that every school, instead of having a 17 community school coordinator to 1 community school coach ratio, which was impossible to give them the support that they needed on a weekly basis, we're gonna have much more support. But also at the NEA level, continuing to invest in the NEA cohort 1, 2, and 3 coaches that then coach the coaches locally who can coach the coordinators at the school sites, right? So it's definitely infrastructure here. We know the district should fund these positions, but then the NEA, because of its national reach, can bring in coaches to support us as we build our curriculum understanding. Cecily?
Yeah, and I wanna echo that, because, you know, Esperanza's doesn't want to toot her own horn, but we'll do it for her. And I think what Ingrid brings up is such a great point, to the point of at the state level, what can be done, right? David just spoke about, even rural, urban, suburban folks actually knowing about community schools and being able to push to say this is good for our babies and our educational community, right? So looking at that from the state level, and then what can be done at the national level. So yes, resources are always going to be important. Money is always going to be important, but you see and hear the stories of on the ground community school coordinators that are changing the lives of our babies. I mean, all of these folks here, and we'll get to the rest of the folks, have stories that go deep into the heart of our educational communities, lifting up our kids, giving them the drive. So why wouldn't we put more money and more resources into that, especially when we know that the threats and the right wing are so determined to push corporate charters and push privatization? Of course, we need to make sure that our schools are funded, that our schools become the community schools to change the face of our lives of our students. Of course we need to do that. So I am looking, as a local leader, I am looking to my state and my national to actually put that money in place so that we can replicate this and just push it out as the model of educational excellence.
Any other questions? Go ahead, David.
Yeah, the community schools, the more that people are investing in it, the more becomes, as Esperanza was talking about, a kind of a buzzword, the more it can lose some of that power, right? It can lose some of the real, and I know what has to be at the core of it is kind of really being run by us, you all, and our members, being connected with our members and with the community. I'm curious how you all, because that's what we're really trying to talk to our locals about, is really having decision-making, democratic decision-making at the school site and the district level. I'm wondering how that's played out for you all in powerful ways, and also some things that we should tell other locals to be nervous about or watch out for in terms of really making decisions at the school site about your community school.
Was that a question?
Yes.
Yeah, I think that it's been really exciting. Like, students are really easy to talk to. I started with students because we started in a pandemic and everybody was stressed out about just the new teaching model. So it was just really enlightening because I've been working with students who are usually behind academically, and so just listening to their stories in different lights, not talking about academics, but just talking about what they wanted. Very intuitive, very intuitive. They wanted social emotional support. They wanted more arts education. They wanted things that would support them as individuals. They wanted problem-solving skills. They wanted to learn how to do that. So students are really very energizing to talk to. The teachers, once they got settled, they were easy to talk to, and the parents has been a little bit of a struggle just for me because don't feel like I'm asking the right questions. So if I were to ask the right questions, I think I could get the right answers. So that's something that I've been working with Esperanza on. Not the right answers, but answers that would inform us more. So sometimes you have to infer what they might want. And so the parent support and just asking the right questions to parents is something that could be looked at a little bit more and need some support with. but very exciting when people want to come together over Zoom. 24 parents at the beginning of the year who wanted to speak to me and express their feelings about the pandemic and, really express their needs for their children, of course. So.
Just quickly to share about Jenny's school, pre-pandemic, she led a cohort of like 7 to 9 4th and 5th graders, trained them to be social investigators at their school site. They led a student needs and assets assessment with their peers, with their little iPads, before school, recess, lunch, after school. What's your hope and dream for our school, right? And she did have this parent group meeting every other week at 2 different times, so that they became the community school experts at their school site, right? And the piece around how do we engage parents, how do we consider each family's culture and context, so that we're not just presenting this like unfamiliar language and asking, what did you think about that, right? But that we're engaging them deeply, that we're asking questions that generate and spark their imagination. Yes, go ahead. How old?
9 and 10?
9.
I mean, I want to really add on to that the way that we as an institution and a bureaucracy communicates to families and students, I think really needs to be re-examined. Well, one of the ways that was happening was that we were bombarding our families with truancy calls, with stuff that like parents weren't really engaging with, and so we had to go back and reinvestigate. Like, where are you? Like, how do we go back to connect with you? Because in my prior days of being able to open community schools, I would go to churches, I would go to grocery stores to talk to the community about what's happening. But in a pandemic, it's like, all right, so where are you? Like, where are you in this digital space, and how can we go back and connect with you? And so that's where we started various activities. And then instead of having like power over, it was like power with, because some of the parents took over those spaces and provided their own resources that I didn't have and I didn't share. And so I think that's really important, that we recognize that our parents are assets, that teachers are assets, versus just resources within the community as assets.
So if there aren't any more questions, I'm gonna pass off the mic to cohort 2, the cohort 2 team. So we have the folks who have been doing the work the last couple of years, and these are the folks who are about to jump in the fall. So we're gonna open up with Maisha Walker from Dorsey High School.
Hello, everyone. I am at. So I have been an educator for over 20 years, but I returned to LAUSD just in time for the strike. And it was such a unique experience because I got to know, it was a form of a retreat, because I got to know so many different educators and what they did just on different levels, and I got to see everyone's passion. One of the wonderful things that came out of the strike was this idea of a community school. And at first it was confusing, but once everyone had an understanding of what it is and got on board, it's just, I'm excited about this opportunity. I'm at Dorsey where, we have 56% African American students, 46% Latinx students. The community itself is, between gentrification and all of the things going on, the community needs our support. I have sat in meetings with students, and students deserve. I've listened to students. I've sat in meetings with parents, just listening to what everyone wants. And we want Dorsey to return to the excellence that it once, was known for. And everyone is so passionate about what's going on. There are alumni working on campus. I work with some phenomenal educators. And people are doing phenomenal things that go along with this community school, almost in isolation. And so what we're able to do now is pull all of that together, and so that it's cohesive and so that we're all working together because the community needs our support. The students need our support. And I'm just excited to get involved and to be here.
Okay, I'm not going to be as eloquent as all of you all, but I did write this stuff down, so I know I have everything I want to say on my page here. So thank you all for letting me be here, inviting me here. I'm a kindergarten teacher, former UTLA chapter chair for my site, current vice chair, and now a proud community schools coordinator for Palms Elementary School, Local West. I was born and raised on the west side of Los Angeles and a product of LAUSD. I went to Coeur d'Alene, Westminster, Mark Twain, Venice High School. So my community is the west side. I've been at my current site, Palms Elementary School, since 2001, and I spent the last 6 years as the UTLA chapter chair. I became chapter chair after the former CC, Regina Bryant, retired. She says to me, easy job, help resolve disputes, be the liaison between members and administration, go to a few meetings. What could go wrong? So, in those 6 years of being chapter chair, our school fought and defeated the threat of co-location from the CWC charter school, fought and defeated developers building 42-unit apartments directly next to our school, led my charter and community members to do our part in winning our victory with the UTLA strike, and now helping to maintain the unity and spirits of our staff and community during this pandemic. Our school is known for our strength and unity and for being a force of change, standing together to take care of and advocate for our students, our school, and each other. As a community, we even removed 2 lemon principals who chose to try to tear our school apart. Our strength is in large part due to our parent relations and our parents' willingness to stand with our teachers. I believe that it's our job as teachers to empower our parents, give them a voice, make them leaders and advocates as well, to help encourage them to be a force of change. And we have. We have parent leaders like on our site like Carmelita, a parent who became a driving force to activate more parents during the co-location fight and the fight against careless developers near our school site. Leaders like Carla Garcia, who we talked about before, who fought those same fights alongside students, teachers, and community members, and now is a driving force and advocate for Reclaim Our Schools. We will be able to do so much more parent outreach now because we are a community school, and I have the resources and support of a designated coordinator. We now have someone who can support our parents, teachers, and students to become the force of change that is made and will continue to make our school and community strong and united.
Whoa. Thank you all for having me here. It's really great to be in a room with all of these fantastic people and all of the strong work that you're doing. I am the chapter chair for Augustus F. Hawkins School for Community Actions, although LAUSD only knows us as Augustus F. Hawkins. Our school started a long time ago, 9 years ago, when LAUSD put out a call for teachers to come up with the school. And we weren't looking to be the saviors to come in and save the school. We went in and talked to the community and did a needs assessment and said, what do you want? What is it that you want to have? And from there, we created our 3 career pathways. So fast forward 9 years later, when Michael Brown was killed in Ferguson. And we decided we wanted to do some research because 19% of our students are African American or Black students. Because I'm finding out that just because somebody looks like me may not mean that they want to use the title African American. And I'm okay with that because we're learning from our students how they want to be called and what they want to be labeled as, right? So when we did this research, knowing that we have gone out to the community, we have accessed, what it is the parents want, what the students want. So to find out pre-pandemic, this research that was delivered to us in April 2020 during the pandemic, that 19% of our students felt invisible. Our Black students said that they felt that they weren't listened to because we weren't really sure why, but we do have a really strong advocacy for newcomers, right? And at some point, our Black students didn't feel like their needs were being addressed. So the first thing we did was realize we can't wait until the doors open to go back and try to do something different. We need to do something now. So we decided that as as advocates, kind of looking at pillar number 1, the student integrated services, that we would actually have mentors assigned to each of our students because it's a small community of people, so we can have like 2 or 3 students. So we decided we were going to ask them, what do you want? So my mentee, she told me she wants to see more black professionals on our campus. So we went to the law firm that represented O.J. Simpson. Hey, can you come down and talk to our students? They were like, yeah, we love to do that. Went to the LA Times, I teach journalism, found that they have a new person there that's in charge of diversity. Hey, can you come and talk to our students on Zoom about what you do? So they did. And we didn't get as many students that first time because, of course, we're trying to build community with these students that said they didn't feel like they were listened to. So the fact that they showed up was great. And they asked really poignant questions. So the next time when we did an event, because one of the other mentees said, we want to know what it's like to be at a HBCU, a historically black college or university, because we've never left Los Angeles. I don't have anybody in my family that went to college, but I keep hearing about HBCUs. So we have staff members that were HBCU members. We have people in our community that are part of HBCUs. We gathered all these people together and went on Zoom again. This time we have more students. Still not as many as we want, but we're starting to see more students. And their parents came. And they turned on their Zoom, and they asked poignant questions. So this is just the beginning of, maybe not even the beginning, but it is the seeds that are planted based on conversations that we're having as we're building a community school. Community school is in our name. Advocacy is what we do. And now thanks to NEA and us having an official title as a community school, we're going to be able to level up what we're doing. So I just am really excited to be here. I'm the chapter chair. Our coordinator, Ms. Cynthia Castillo, couldn't be here today, but that's all right. She's down for the cause. We all are. And again, I'm just really excited to be here, and I hope that that kind of gives you just a glimpse of what we plan on doing and continuing at Hawkins High School. School of Community Action.
If you don't know, Students Deserve is a grassroots coalition of students, parents, and educators fighting against race and class inequities in and beyond LAUSD. We do not have an executive director because we strive to be a non-hierarchical, student-led organization and to really be driven. Can y'all hear me?
Mm-hmm. You can take it off.
All right. And to really be driven by the voices, the needs, the experiences of our student leaders, some of whom, powerful student leaders you saw in the video just now, Marche and Nia Lima and other folks who really helped to lead, the student-led portion of supporting the teacher strike. And in many ways, they had a viral dance that Maya started at Venice High School that went across, the city of students dancing in support of their teachers and things like that. And so the fight around community schools or for community schools and Students Deserve's place in that is also, long, right? And before and leading up to even the strike. And Students Deserve has long been a partner of both UTLA and also Black Lives Matter Los Angeles, right? And we have been heavily influenced by the Movement for Black Lives Divest and Invest model. And so one of the earliest, Students Deserve campaigns was the fight to divest from random searches and other policies that criminalize students in schools and to invest in the resources that students need. And one of the things that students identified, again, very early on was community schools. Once they learned about this model, right, it was something that we were fighting for very, very early on. Divest from policies that criminalize students and bring in more resources that give us ownership over our schools, like the community schools model. And so, that was a huge piece of UTLA's, community developed platform, right? This bargaining for the common good model that UTLA really embodied in 2019 during the strike. And some of these demands that UTLA fought and went on strike for were demands that came directly from students, parents, educators on the ground level, right? Things like community schools, things like the pilot program to end random searches, things like the support services for immigrant students, and so many other things that came directly from the experiences that students and parents and educators were bringing to UTLA leadership, and UTLA leadership being courageous enough, right, to say, we're gonna work to get our members on board to support these community developed, these student developed demands, right, with community schools being a huge piece of that. So as you saw, that was, has long been one of the pieces that students deserve and UTLA have been so aligned on, and one of the impetuses behind the creation of Reclaim Our Schools LA, right? Of bringing together this labor and community and really student, parent, and educator force, right? To change public education around, some of these shared ideals, right? Of believing in community schools, of believing in the need to end the criminalization of our students, of believing in the need for more resources for our students, for lower class sizes, all these kinds of things for the shared vision of what we know our schools should be, right? And the ways in which our schools should be serving our students. So that was 2019. Fast forward to this last year with the pandemic and the racial justice uprising. Obviously, UTLA support was instrumental in getting a victory in the end to random searches in 2019, right? And pushing the district to vote to end this policy, right? Which, for folks who don't know, was a policy that in LAUSD took students out of school every single day for quote unquote random weapon searches. Right, but only certain schools, and also students felt only certain students, right? That students, especially black students and also Muslim students, were targeted by this policy, right? And were repeatedly searched and criminalized in school, and their educational time being interrupted and being made to feel like criminals and suspects in places where they're supposed to be, feeling at home and welcome and ready to learn, right? And supported. So during the pandemic, right, there were so many issues that came up, and we had launched also a campaign against the use of pepper spray against students right before the pandemic hit, during the Black Lives Matter Week of Action in February 2020. Right, we had a big action at the school board fighting against the use of pepper spray against black students in LAUSD, which we'd seen happen over and over again. And so the pandemic and the racial uprising that came, or the uprising against police violence that came, very much highlighted issues that we were already talking about, and the need for the changes that we had already been demanding, and the urgent need, right, for some of these changes not to happen incrementally as they had been, but for LAUSD to be willing to make bold changes. And students and parents and educators and community members used the momentum and this uprising and this demand for change to also bring this to the school system, right? And so, also before the pandemic, one of our partners out of UCLA, the $1 Million Hoods Project, released a report called Policing Our Students that showed that black students were 8% of LAUSD, but 25% of all contact with school police, arrests, citations, and diversions, and almost 30% of arrests. Right, so 3 to 4 times overrepresented via their population, right? So we knew that this, pandemic of racist policing was not something that was separate from what our students were experiencing in schools, right? And so when, the call for these radical changes that we need and that our communities deserve in policing came in the streets, Students and Students Deserve said, we want to bring this to our schools too. And so we went to, following the lead of the students, we went to Black Lives Matter LA. We said, students want to bring this to schools. We want to do some joint actions, marches on our, on the school board, demanding divestment from police and investment in the resources that we need. So we had a number of actions over the summer pushing for exactly that, pushing for police-free schools, for reimagining what school safety looks like in a way that doesn't criminalize, especially black students, right? And so many of our low-income students of color. And so we went back over and over and over to the school board. UTLA was amazing in their support. Cecily had just transitioned into leadership, and she said, we're going to take this moment and take a bold stance. And we're going to push our members to take a bold stance, not just, stop doing this, stop doing this. We're going to take an abolitionist stance that our students deserve, that our communities deserve, and stand fully behind our black students in this time when they need it. And that was hugely powerful, right, in bringing community together and getting folks on board and elevating students' voices to really be able to impact these policies in the second largest school district in the country, right? And so ultimately we were able to get the school board last summer, again, along with over 70 other community organizations that signed on, Brothers Son Selves Coalition, Community Coalition, Social Justice Learning Institute, so many other folks who were a part. Obviously, Reclaim Our Schools LA and our partners were a part in pushing this forward. We were able to push the school district to vote to cut the school police department, which at that time had a budget of almost $80 million per year, by $25 million, and to redirect that money towards a Black Student Achievement Plan. Huge victory. The first time in LAUSD history that there are dedicated funds, resources towards Black students, towards promoting Black student achievement in a holistic way, right? And so not only did we push for that cut, over the next few months, we again continue to work with our community partners, with students, with parents, with educators, and built a plan for what that reinvestment should look like, for what the Black Student Achievement Plan and the resources that go into that should look like. And that included things like psychiatric social workers, that included things like restorative justice teachers, that included things like pupil services and attendance counselors, that included things like academic counselors, so more of our kids were getting academic and college and career ready support. And it also included community schools, because we continue to see that in order for our Black students especially, and all of our students to thrive, we need to fundamentally change the model of education, the model of public education, right, that has been so influenced by corporatization and privatization and these top-down bureaucratic solutions, and has really invisibilized and silenced the voices and the needs and the experiences and the brilliance and the resources, as Joel was saying, right, that our students and our parents and our educators and our community members possess, and their ability to meet the needs and to change and transform their school communities in the ways that they need to be transformed. And so community schools was a big piece of the Black Student Achievement Plan, along with a number of these other resources. We were able to win that in February. The school board adopted our basically proposal, the community developed proposal for the Black Student Achievement Plan, which included 10 additional community schools in schools in LAUSD, targeting the schools in LAUSD with the highest numbers of Black students, so that our schools, like Dorsey High School, which has fought against reconstitution, has fought against gentrification, has fought against efforts to close it, and so many other things, that these schools in our historically Black communities can be some of the first schools to be able to benefit from this transition, and that students and the parents and the educators, like Maisha was saying, who want these schools to be successful, who want these schools to be vibrant community centers, can have a real role and a voice in pushing this transition forward. And so usually I don't speak on behalf of us, and we'll have students to talk to you later, and really excited for that, but just happy to be able to share the work that truly our students have led for years, that generations of student leaders have been on the forefront of saying, end the criminalization and the abuse of us in our schools, and give us the resources, the supports, the services, and the models of schooling, the transformative models of education like community schools that we deserve.
It is a real inspiration to hear from each of the coordinators and the chapter chair about what's going on in your school. And I look forward to coming in and visiting your schools, because you guys are why we're fighting for community schools. You guys are the front line of what's possible. We always hear from the reformers, the so-called reformers, the market reformers, that we're only worried about the adults and they're worried about the students. But all their solutions are only about adults and never about students. You guys are actually talking about what it is that students need, what students are identified that they need, what families are identified that they need. That's the truth, and that we got to center that truth. And Reclaim Our Schools Los Angeles is a coalition led by 4 organizations. We've got 2 of them here today speaking up strong. Is Students Deserve, UTLA, ACE, which is a community organizing coalition that works on housing, education, a lot of different issues, and then LANE, which is a longstanding labor community partner organization. So it's really vital, because thanks to the support of NEA and UTLA, organizations are able to really put the work into the organizing. Because at the end of the day, this is all about power. This is a fight for who is going to control the destiny of our children, our communities, and our education system. And we are not going to compete unless we are building power continuously. So, we're very proud to have played a substantial role supporting Students Deserves leadership in the fights that Joseph was just describing. I think, predating my time here, Reclaim Our Schools was instrumental, as you saw from the video, in supporting the UTLA strike. But that was because those fights were not Students Deserves fight or UTLA's fights. They were all of our fights. And because we had built a common ground agenda to win the common good, And so most recently here, following some of and some of it going on at the same time as some of the things that Joseph was describing. So there was 10 community schools. There were one in February. And then we said, well, you know what? Community schools should be the model. That was the whole idea. Community schools should be the model for all of Los Angeles. And if all there is that UTLA has a full-time amazing person in Esperanza to support the schools, and the district has half-time person, that's never going to be a way to build a model. That's a way to build a cul-de-sac, And, so we instead said, okay, yeah, we want 30 more community schools. And I came from New York, where I was the executive director for Alliance for Quality of Education for a long time, and I saw how de Blasio rolled things out too quickly all at once. We want 30 more community schools, 10 a year, following the ones that we already have, the first 30 plus the 10 that Joseph described winning. And we want, even maybe more important, the infrastructure to support them. So we want a director of community schools, and we want a coach, as Esperanza was saying, for every 5 community schools coordinators, 5 to 7 community schools coordinators, okay? And, it was like, I remember one of the coordinators telling me, oh my goodness, you're telling me instead of having one person working with 17 schools, we're gonna have one working 5? That's amazing, And that's the infrastructure we need to hold on to as we wanna build this out from 70 to 100 to 200 to 700 schools. Every school in the district, should be a community school. And, but the way we get there is as important as the what. It's true at your schools, as you guys all described. It's also true as we talk about what is the politics to get there. And so what we're doing is we are building 7 committees, 1 in each school board district, which unite parents, teachers, and students. I should say educators, because all the educators, parents, educators, and students. And I got to tell you, school board members are it's very eye-opening to see a well-organized, well-informed group of parents, students, and educators coming to the table together to say we have one agenda and we're fighting for it. And you know what? When the teacher says this, the student says that, and the parent picks up the piece that's missing there, and it's all one, that really makes an impression. And we're going to build that power out. We're going to build these committees out. Our goal is that by the end of the year, we will have 30 active leaders regularly engaging with each one of these 7 committees, and that's just a starting place, and so and it's leaders like Carla who Derek and I were talking before, because Carla had told me that the way that she first got active was, and you saw her on the video there, but the way that she first got active was because her and Derek started talking, and it's that one-to-one outreach we all need to do with each other. Whether you're a parent, a student, or a teacher, or an educator, you need to be reaching out to everybody else. And all of you guys are doing that, and we all need to do that. That's how we build power. So, because of that, we were able to win the community schools, but also we played a major role in the infrastructure. We also played a major role in winning other things that parents, students, and educators had prioritized, which was doubling down on the on LAUSD's unmet commitment to provide a nurse at every school. We got the school board to adopt a resolution absolutely committing to that. And second, which you can just imagine, I know that educators are thinking this, but you can just imagine how parents and students are feeling, wait, there's a pandemic and I'm supposed to go to school without a nurse, ensuring that those schools, that there's enough cleaners, right? A lot of parents are like, I went to that school and it was never clean enough. And now it's not as clean as it was because they made cuts, and we need to, this is a pandemic. We need clean schools, and ensuring that there's social workers and counselors at every school, enough of them to really support students, because we all know that as much as there is trauma in our communities all the time, there is so much trauma coming from this pandemic that we need attention to that, as you guys have said, that students identified that kind of stuff. So, and just the only thing I want to add other than that is sort of our work, is that we are working closely with the NEA Community School Strategic Institute and with Kyle, and we're also connecting with some of the work of CTA around the different locals around the state, and we're here to be supportive of the work in other parts of the country, because we know that the work here is a little further ahead than some other places. So we have things to share, but we can also always keep learning. And so we're here to engage with that, and it's very exciting to be here today with all of you. And I want to get you guys and some of the parents and students you work with in front of a bunch of school board members, okay? I want to get you guys there to hear, the truth is the truth, and you guys got the truth. So thank you.
Get it to you. So this was written by Reclaim Our Schools Los Angeles, and it's meant to give you some insight into what it actually looks like when we say that a community school is an important strategy for COVID and racial justice. So this is in front of you. You should read this. And in the coming year, we hope to merge the Reclaim Our Schools work and the work of Cohort 1 and Cohort 2 schools so that more parents, more students and teachers are stepping into the broader movement for community schools. So I want to stop talking, hand it off to Cecily and Becky to see where we go from here.
Yeah, thank you, Esperanza, and thank you, everyone, for coming and also sharing the work that y'all do to affect change in the lives of our students and our educational community. It means a lot to have educators here in the space and doing that work. And then, of course, our strategic partners, Students Deserve and Reclaim Our Schools LA for being steadfast in the work. And so my question to both David and Becky, our national and state partners, how can we ensure from all of the stuff that you heard, all of the work that we heard, how do we know that we can count on CTA and NEA for the support, the resources to guide this work for our educational community? We heard so much great stuff today, and where we need to go and how we need to change. How can we count on y'all to really lift up, to highlight, but also put your money where your mouth is and say, we are invested in your cause, our cause, because it's collective, local, state, and national, really coming together under the guise of community schools.
That's for you.
Yeah, Cecily, I love that. Ask for what you want. Who said that? I'm not afraid to ask what I want. Somebody said that earlier. So here's the thing, Cecily. I wouldn't be here today if that commitment weren't there. You personally, but I'll share with the others, heard me lay out not just the vision, but how we were getting to that vision, and community schools was at the center. And the resources that we've already allocated and we plan to allocate from the NEA are there and are coming and will increase. So there's that. But here's the thing, and this goes back to something I said earlier. I'm thinking, I'm stepping up. I'm putting NEA's money where my mouth is, but I want to put other people's money where my mouth is. So, I mean, you guys are politically astute, so you know how a bill becomes a law and all the sausage making. Yeah. But President Biden increasing community schools by $400 billion, that didn't just happen. That's right. That didn't just happen, guys. That happens because we demanded that happen. I want the federal government's money where my mouth is. I want the state government's money where my mouth is. I want the local government's money where my mouth is. I want everybody's money. And to Cecily's point, it's not only about the money. That's why I asked the questions I asked, because it is about using those resources. And I'll use the big, let me use resources, this is not the word. I don't mean the big R resources. So it's money. Don't ever talk to me about we can't afford it and we can't die. We need the money. But we also need the time, and we need the people. So even as you're doing the community schools work and you're thinking about the learnings from this year that you're bringing forward after this year of the pandemic, you know, I thought about when you were talking about the parents, and I wrote it down, I have to write everything down, and reimagining, I'm gonna paraphrase you, but reimagining that connection with engagement with parents. I mean, this year was very different. The relationship between parents and teachers and other educators this year, powerful. How are we building on that? And how does our community schools model support that? And so, you know, we know our educators are falling over. They're exhausted. They're not, they're doing office hours for the kids, and those turned into office hours for the parents. They're working till 11 o'clock at night, and they're not stopping. They are taking courses. I know because we, the NEA, developed many, and they're on there. They were taking courses, learning how to teach their kids better virtually, connecting across the country and the world with other educators so they can ensure the babies are still learning. They're exhausted. So how, in this moment, do we reimagine, right, teaching and learning? So many opportunities here, and we're doing it with our parents. And oh my goodness, Joseph, I can't wait to meet those kids because we're doing it with our kids. Yes. And what, by the way, our kids have always led.
Yes.
Our youth have always led our movement in this country and around the world, right? So that you're creating the space and providing the support for them and getting the hell out of their way and letting them lead, pretty phenomenal. This is not answering your question. I got ideas. So, and that's why I'm here, because I'm full of ideas. So in addition to leveraging other people's money, to answer your question, I'm also, so first of all, I'm sitting here trying to figure out, how do I take this show on the road? Everybody needs to sit through this last hour and a half that I just sat through. Everyone. And Esperanza, I mean, just the way you put this together, so thoughtful, strategic, and powerful, right? Because we heard the real stories, and then we heard and you gave us that run up. I say this all the time because people, Cecily, you know, and Alex, oh, you know, we want to do what UTLA did as related to the strike. And I said, you need to talk to them. Because you're not just going on strike. Right. They've been building this for years. They understood the power in their communities. They understood the power of listening. That's why that video, we saw that happening all across this county. And so this is what I'm thinking about. It's kind of a question, and that you don't have to answer right now. But I was thinking about, I'm always thinking about my counterparts at the national level. So when David was whispering in my ear as I was watching the video talking about the school board folks, I've already talked with the president of the National School Boards Association about community schools and what I need from him and his team to help support that at the national level. And so, you know, I'm thinking about what outreach you are already doing at you know, in a national level, counterparts at the national level. And I'm talking to the educators too, because you go to national conferences, you're talking with people at a national level, the one-to-one, Billy, what you say, I mean, what are you, I want you to always be thinking about how you can see that work. So those are the kinds of things I'm thinking about, and I would want to know, like I said, you don't have to answer me now, what connections you're making that I can also tap into. But I'm thinking about, you know, school boards, the administrators, all of them need to be hearing what I just heard. So are you willing to travel? Did I get to ask a question too? Yeah, you can ask a question. I'm not kidding. I'm really not kidding. That's for me. I am so inspired by what you're doing in here in Los Angeles, but it's not enough. Yeah. It's not enough. What you're doing has to reach across this state for sure. And thank you for articulating the rural and suburban pieces. Gotta pay attention to that. But it's gotta go far beyond the borders of this state. And so that's what I'm trying to think about. So the commitment, done. But it's leveraging that collective in ways that I want you to be thinking about. That you can say, yeah, Becky, put me in, coach. I'm ready. And you are ready. And you got a lot to do. So rest if you must. But I got work for you. More work for you. Did I answer your question?
We are all ready to spread the gospel with your
Put me in, coach.
Go ahead, Ben.
May I share one thing? I know you know about this, but I just want to highlight, because I think the biggest thing is that this is successful, right? Especially given that there's folks, first of all, wanting to define what community schools mean, and then wanting to pounce when they're not successful, right? And I think that's kind of the biggest thing. And I just want to highlight that you all have inspired what Becky was talking about is happening on an embryonic phase, right? So now there is a national, as I was saying, NEA has an institute nationally. And you all are represented. Alex is actually a coach there. And there's a national steering committee that's made up, again, reflecting some of the lessons heard, that's made up of educators, union leaders, and community groups as equal partners in the steering committee of the national, right? And now we've also developed, so we have also, so there's 40 locals nationally that are part of that. I think 44, I think. And then there are 20 in California. So we're half of the ones in the nation, roughly, are in California. And to your point, Cecily, this is really our chance to not have it be, because if it's only UTLA, we don't build enough momentum across the state. And it gets isolated, it gets attacked as something crazy outside the realm of what everyone can do. So now each one of our locals, we have 20 locals here, have a coach. We have Kyle's a coach. We have folks from Midwest Academy as coaches. We have NEA staff. Alex is a coach, and they each have locals where they're going through this process. They're doing it without the benefit of having years of building it, without a powerful strike to have done this, right? So they're really focused on internal organizing first to get their own members involved. We all got involved because we were won over when we saw the power of it, as you were saying, during the strike, right? That won us over. It defined it for us because of all the work that had gone into it. And so I just want to point out that what you're saying, again, it's not 400 locals, it's not 500 locals, it's 40 right now. But it is, and UTLA, your leadership and Reclaim Our Schools, leadership, speaking of that, all the students deserve, your leadership is being held up as a model nationally, as something that's giving the rest of the locals nationally. And the other thing that's exciting is that there's other people doing this, right? Sometimes I think we feel like in LA, we feel like we're an island, right? And we can be. But there's other folks who are also putting this stuff together. And so I just want to point out that that is happening. And it's happening in its really embryonic phase, and it's not nearly big enough. But and this is going to be, with all this billions of dollars coming in to California, this is where it's going to be a real challenge, because there's going to be people who are going to be trying to force these decisions on locals across the state, where they're going to say, they're going to find out on Tuesday, oh, we're a community school. We right? Without any talk about a decision-making process or hiring coordinators. And so, and so that's something that we're going to also have to struggle to make it be successful here in California-wide. But you all, again, coming full circle, you all are being held up as a model in each one of these places as something that, and again, I don't want to take away from how hard it is and frustrating it is and how sometimes it feels like it's, I'm sure, like it's not being successful. Even so, it is a beautiful model that you all are creating. So I want to, again, honor you all, their leadership for doing it, and NEA for Kyle and all the work that he's done, and really seen as a national leader on this. We have Kyle talking with people in California and really give an example. Whenever we get regs from California here, we pass them by Kyle.
Yes.
How does this pass this? Does this work? Is this the real putting where the power where it needs to be? And he says yes or no, and then we go back and we struggle around this. And so I think it's starting to happen. You all are way at the forefront of it. Now it's our job to really catch up and be supportive of you all so that we defend it for all of us. So. And yeah, I really appreciate you doing this. It's really been a beautiful process to be part of and see the work that's going on with so many locals across California and nationally.
What I heard today is that you are thinking about and working on this in a systemic way. You're approaching it in a way that it'll make a difference long term. You're connecting all of those structures and systems of inequity that exist. So I want to applaud that. And then I want to say this. Thank you for lifting up and valuing the assets of our communities. Thank you for doing that.
I sit in a very unique situation. I'm a teacher. I'm also an NEA board of director, but this past November, I got elected to serve on the Alhambra School Board. So I'm hearing all of this, and actually I've been discussing this with our superintendent. And to hear all of this, my question is, how can we do this? How can we get more board members onto school districts to make this a lot easier for us? We had 3 educators just elected onto the Alhambra School Board. Decision is a lot easier when you have the majority. So how can we, as a union, get more of our educators to be inspired to run for school board, to run for elected officials positions, because election does matter. Because I learned from Norman Mineta that when you want to affect changes, you have to be in a position to make decisions. And so I wanted to put that challenge out I want to thank UTLA, thank you, Cecily, for your leadership, David, at the state level, and Becky at the national level. But how can we, as the most powerful union, get more of our members and more of our families to run for office, right? Because that's where the decision makings are at. And so it would make life a lot easier for us doing all of these things. And this is something that I want to make happen in my school district. So it's such a unique situation this morning. And I want to thank Cecily for allowing me to sit in on this, because I wasn't sure where I was supposed to be, but I'm just so lucky to to hear such a powerful movements and everyone doing such an amazing job. So thank you everyone for all you do. But yes, let's get this group in front of board members. So that they can be, have that knowledge and be inspired to make those changes, because this is what we need for our babies.
Yeah, go ahead, Cecily. So I think that question that you raise is very important. And I think that even when you have a friendly school board or you don't have a friendly school board, this is always the right time to push and demand justice and transformation and transformative change on behalf of our students. And so when you have school board members, and we know up and down the state, we have new educators, or not new, but educators that have run for school board. So how do we help all of those school boards, right? So that means we have to share the resources of the community, what Joseph and Billy were saying, like these delegation visits that have educators, have students, and have parents to come together and do that. So that's one way that we can get in front of school board members, is actually engaging the community and have delegation visits. That's one. 2, you have to be in the streets and demanding change for our babies. And the only way that we can do that type of demanding is the deep engagement work that our educators are doing on the ground and our students are doing on the ground. And so we have to affect that change, and it is up to our state and our national to actually talk about the beauty and the complexities of community schools, one-on-one engagement, building power on the ground. And those are the things that will change. And when we give those resources out to board members and share those school board resolutions that we're talking about, then we will see some change for community schools, change for our educational community at large.